Well, hello there, everyone, and welcome to Mind Your Business. I'm Jennifer Anderson, Executive Director of the Georgina Chamber of Commerce. I'm also the host of the show. Well, this is a show that we started back in March of 2020 with Rogers TV Georgina in an effort to help businesses. It's for businesses. It's about businesses within the town of Georgina. And over the last year, as we've seen the pandemic for over a year now, we've seen and helped businesses navigate their way through protocols, through grants and resources. And we've also seen businesses have to go through different stages. We've seen the stages, the colors, the emergency lockdown, the stay-at-home order, the emergency break. We've seen it all. And businesses really have had to learn their way through each of the stages, each of the protocols to understand what their business needs to do. What about those legal responsibilities? What about the labor issues that these businesses have had to go through? That's what we're talking about on today's show. And in order to talk about these legal issues, I have the perfect guests with me today. You can see them on the screen. They are two employment lawyers with Minkin Employment Lawyers. Kyle Burgess, thank you so much for being part of the show.
Oh, thank you very much for having us, Jennifer. Thank you.
And we also have one of your colleagues, employment lawyer Sarah Cotter, who is joining us as well. Hi, Sarah.
Hello. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It really is a great opportunity to be able to discuss the legalities for businesses. And there's always been legal issues for businesses, but now more than ever, as things change on, it seems like a daily basis, it's important for businesses, for the employers and the employees to really know what their rights and obligations are. So I'm glad that you are joining us on the show today. Kyle, maybe we can start with you. Let's talk first just a little bit about Minkin Employment Lawyers. What is your firm? What's it all about?
Sure. So Minkin Employment Lawyers, we're a boutique firm. Our firm is actually located in Markham, Ontario, just off of Unionville Main Street. We practice exclusively in employment law. So we represent both employers and employees across the province and across Canada on a variety of employment law topics. So it can be anything from terminations to hiring to policy drafting, human rights matters, and of course, a lot of the matters that have come up because of the pandemic that's hit the workplace, accommodation issues, and drafting a lot of the documents that you can see that would be part of an employment relationship, primarily things like employment agreements or hiring letters, those sorts of things. That's probably a good sort of quick summary of what it is that our firm does.
Well, and I know you're talking about a quick summary. I look at the services that you provide. I looked at your website and it's a mile long. So there really is a lot of legalities when it comes to businesses. Absolutely. There's a number of different things that employers would need at their workplace, or many things to consider. Other things they can even touch upon outside of human rights is Occupational Health and Safety Act matters. There's WSIB matters that come up as well at times. And so it really is a plethora of things, and it tends to what an employer would need and what sort of services they would need, or even an employee, what they would need, is going to primarily be dictated by a number of things, such as maybe the size of the workplace, the industry that they work in. But even if you put aside those details of it, every single workplace will have situations where they're hiring individuals. Unfortunately, working relationships will come to an end, whether that's a termination or a resignation. And there's constantly matters that arise as a result of that, from things like confidentiality, non-competition clauses, non-solicitation clauses, and as you said, the list goes on and on when it comes to employment law, for sure. Well, and I know from looking at your bio and Sarah's bio as well, that that list also pertains to what it is that you do. And Sarah, I know you started your career at Minkin, and I can see that list of who you represent and the types of things that you do. So I know both of you are very versed in employment law and all of the different aspects. I'm assuming I'm correct in saying that.
Yes. Yes, we're both very well versed in all aspects of employment law. A lot of firms focus exclusively on either the employer side or the employee side. And one of the things that makes our practice unique and our firm unique is that we do act for both employers and employees, not at the same time, because that would be a conflict. But it gives us a unique advantage, a unique perspective, because we're able to analyze the needs of each side and anticipate what the opposite side's needs are going to be, or how they may respond to certain things that are being done, because at one time or another, we've both been on both sides of the table. So it's, I find it really rewarding myself for my practice. I enjoy the variety of work, and I think it has made me a better lawyer, and I think it really helps my clients as well.
Yeah, and Sarah, I don't want to throw you off with this question, but it just came to mind as you were speaking, as, we talk about the pandemic and how things have changed on an almost daily basis for businesses. That's something that you in your career have to keep up with. So, being able to understand the law and know when things change and know how to apply that to the work that you do, it gives you a sense of empathy now that you're going through this with businesses, that as they try and keep up, you can almost say, I've been there. I know it's hard to navigate, and we'll get you through that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that is definitely accurate. The law is always changing slightly. It's not a static thing. And so as lawyers, we're used to staying abreast of new changes in legislation, new changes in case law. But this has been a very, very different experience. So as you said, not only has it been a sort of, tailspin experience for employers and employees, but for us employment lawyers as well, because the law is constantly changing, and we're trying to stay one step ahead of everyone so that we can advise our clients in the best way that we can. And with law, law comes from different sources. There's the legislative changes, but there's also the common law piece, the judge-made law, and that usually trails behind some of the legislative changes. So when it comes to advising, there's advice that we're giving, but I know myself and Kyle too, and my other colleagues outside the firm and within, we're very cautious to say, for a lot of these things, we're still waiting for the judges to weigh in on a lot of these things as well. So it's definitely been an interesting experience in the last year, and it's been challenging, but it's been exhilarating too.
Has that been one of the biggest challenges? And this is for both of you, but Sarah, has that been one of the biggest challenges for your firm, for your sector? Is just navigating the changes?
I think it has, because we're doing the best we can. We're trying to keep up with the new legislative changes. We're trying to analyze that within the framework of previous judges' decisions and sort of what we know about legal principles, and trying to apply it to very new circumstances. And sometimes as lawyers, we don't always know everything definitively, and things can't always be definitively black and white. The law is very much shades of gray. So I think it's definitely been a challenge for us, and I think we're doing a good job navigating that. But it's definitely been a unique experience in such a so much change in such a short period of time. It's something that in my years of practice, I've never really had to deal with it to this extent.
So, Kyle, as you have gone through the last year, have you seen changes with businesses when they are coming to you with issues? Have there been kind of that standard issue? Have they changed as a result of the pandemic, or have certain issues just been heightened as a result of what we've been going through?
Yeah, I'd say that, it's hard to put it on a percentage basis, but I'd say the majority of cases still remain the same. The issues on a majority basis have remained the same. There are new things that the pandemic has heightened or brought forward as an issue that really wasn't much of a predominant issue before. A perfect example of that was when there were government shutdowns with COVID-19, and employers were placing people on temporary layoffs. A lot of questions came up about temporary layoffs. Is this what's referred to as constructive dismissal? When is it okay? When is it not okay? this really heightened it. And I never expected that I would be talking so much about temporary layoffs as I was at the beginning of COVID-19. Now, granted, I don't want to just say that it was at the beginning. It is something that is ongoing for a lot of individuals, unfortunately, and then for a lot of businesses as well, as a result of the restrictions and the ebbing and flowing of shutdowns that is happening. But that's an example of something that prior to, I'd say, March of 2020, wasn't really on a lot of companies' radars. It could be very sector specific, or it could be a very unique circumstance, but all of a sudden it became something that was very much so applied across the board. So that was something that we noticed was definitely a change. Another thing that's been heightened by this as well, I'd say, is accommodation. Now, employers have always had the obligation and the duty to accommodate, on grounds of human rights, disabilities and so forth. But what this pandemic has also brought forward is a different type of accommodation, in the sense of a lot of companies wanting to continue to work and having individuals working from home. And so there's accommodation needs to come with individuals working from home. When schools are shut down, just as is currently going, has happened for some regions the other week, and is going to be happening in a week's time for the rest of our province. There's that accommodation factor that comes with that, because you will automatically have workers who either are already working from home, and now their children, if not already doing school from home, will be at home. And the need for those parents to make sure that they're still able to provide the parental guidance for their children throughout the day. And then you'll have individuals who cannot work from home and have to somehow make ends meet and figure out how do they go to their job when they have children at home that can't be left by themselves. And so this has really heightened types of accommodation, I'd say. This sort of accommodation did exist before, but again, not as widespread as this current circumstances is created. So I'd say those are examples of new things that have come to the forefront in employment law caused by the pandemic, but the majority basis of what we've had to address, I'd say, has gone unchanged.
Right. And I find it fascinating, and I'll have to say, I was looking at your blog on your website, and it's a great resource for that type of information, because as I'm reading through each one, I'm looking at something and going, I didn't know that businesses, had to provide or allowing for ergonomic chairs might be an option for businesses, even though somebody is working from home, because you still have to have a safe environment for them working, even though they're in their own home. So those types, and those types of things, I'm sure, have been coming up at workplaces all over the place as they try and figure out what they need to be doing throughout this pandemic.
Yeah, it's new things that have been having to be thought about, and what'll be interesting to see on a go forward basis is, will this continue? Has this set a new, not a legal precedent? I hate to use the word precedent as a lawyer here, but is it setting a new standard for what we're going to see on a go forward basis as well? How many workplaces will revert back to what it was before, and how many will do this? And I think a lot of it, depending on where it is, will depend on how employers have navigated those waters and the response back that they've had from both from the employer towards the employee and vice versa in navigating that accommodation.
Right. Is precedent a cringeworthy word in the lawyer? Is it like pivot to everybody?
No, it's I wouldn't say it's cringeworthy. It's definitely something that is a daily used word for sure by lawyers, but just didn't want to make sure I wasn't misusing it in the context of what I was suggesting here. So.
Right. Very good. We got the disclaimer in.
There you go. There you go.
For the show. Yes. Sarah, one of the things that Kyle mentioned was staying at home, and now businesses are having to navigate. At one point, having your employees work from home became the standard or protocol, what people needed to do during this time. And I think over time, a lot of businesses have also recognized that perhaps there's a better work environment, a better, people are getting more done by being at home, and maybe they don't need the storefront or what they had in kind of the previous time. Are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, I am finding that. I think there's been a real shift, both in terms of, practically people working from home, as you were saying. And I think that there's been a mental shift as well, which is what you were alluding to. And, I think that there are still some employers who really feel that there needs to be a presence, a physical presence on site. But I think more and more employers are realizing that their businesses can successfully run on a remote basis with employees working from home. And, I think with the proper technology that most employers have implemented now, because we're a year in, I do think that working remotely is something that is here to stay. And I think that as employers feel more comfortable, realize that it can be done, and employers should be, if they haven't done it already, hopefully putting into place proper policies and procedures to make sure that confidentiality is being maintained and that work equipment is still being used and treated as work equipment, even though it is in someone's personal space in their home. I think, putting aside how long COVID is going to last, I think that the working from home arrangement, doing things remotely, I do think it is here to stay. And I think that the public is okay with it as well. I know for myself, if someone had told me a year ago that I could basically do my entire job from home, I would have laughed and said there was no way that was possible. Right. And yet here I am. And, I think that the clients, most of the time we had face-to-face meetings with people. That was just sort of the norm. And I think the public has pivoted really well. And I think a lot of people are okay to be able to do things remotely like this through Zoom or other platforms. And I find a lot of time people are okay just speaking to me over the phone. And sometimes I find that there's actually less distractions when I am working from home and I am speaking to my clients. A lot of times they're at home too. They're relaxed, they're comfortable. They're not, they didn't have to travel to see me. They're saving time from that standpoint. And, the technology, I think, has definitely been a key thing. And I think now that that's been sorted out, I do think that we're not going to go back 100% to the way things were. And, I had an employer client a couple of months ago now who was very much wanting people to be on site, and he was having his staff rotate. So it wasn't that they had to be on site, 5 days a week full time. But there was, a little bit of pushback from him that he didn't necessarily want employees to be, getting too used to working remotely. And I think now with the lockdowns, I haven't spoken to him since the last one, but I think even he was sort of appreciating the fact that there can be some positive aspects to working from home.
Right. So we've talked about working from home. We've talked about kind of the health and safety issues. I just want to bring up a couple of issues that I assume have been coming up over the last year. One is work travel and personal travel. And I've added both of those because work is obviously work-related travel, but also employers are now having to navigate their employees who are on vacation and who maybe leave the country or go to a different province. And now you're having to deal with, those different issues. Are you seeing that with some of your clients, Kyle?
Not too much in actual occurrences. What I'd say is that the discussion has certainly come up. The question is coming up, I think, now with vaccines becoming more readily available and it coming down in age groups and other people being able to obtain them. I think now it's starting to be top of mind for some companies to say, okay, people are going to be able to travel more. And for not work basis, but for pleasure as well. And how do we navigate those waters? What is our obligations as an employer for health and safety standpoint? What sort of steps can we take without crossing that line between it's work related and the employee's personal privacy of where they've gone, what they've done, and so on and so forth. So I'm starting to hear those conversations now. I think just because it's becoming a bit of a reality, or I think there's a real hope that it will soon become a very good reality for everyone. And it's one of those things where again, it's another line that has to be drawn to say what is too far. How far can the questions go? With where someone has traveled. Have they obtained their vaccine? Did they quarantine? And all these questions that are really uncharted waters in a lot of ways, because we haven't had to deal with situations like this. So it is starting to come up as a point of conversation, and I think that we'll see things unfold in the next few months on that in a little bit more detail, hopefully. But I think that bare minimum, as things stand right now, whether it's someone's traveling for a personal reason or if they're traveling for business, when it comes to having to quarantine when they come back, and if it's not a sort of job that they're able to do remotely, but something that has to be done physically at the workplace, all that time is built into the time that the employee is either taking off for a personal vacation, or if it's work related, the employer has to build that in to say, this is how long this individual now is not going to be actively working for me, and having to figure out, is this worth it? What are the ways that we can kind of have overlap between employees and performing duties and so forth. So again, it's all uncharted waters for employers and employees alike, trying to figure out how to make this work, because I'm sure that there are a number of people out there who are itching to travel and to get out there once it's safe in their mind to do so, and it will come with all of these extra questions. So it's bound to happen. The question is when and how will it unfold amongst the different workplaces is to be seen for sure.
Well, and I think it's almost like, and that's what you were saying, never have you heard temporary layoffs so much a year ago. And hopefully a few months, you'll say, never have I heard so many things about vacations.
Right. Exactly. That'd be great. It would be great as long as it's as long as there's a good solution for it, right? There's a way in which the employers and employees can navigate that path with the best of everyone's that's good for both of them in proceeding further, I would say.
Right. The same with, an employee feeling safe in the workplace. And I would think that this was something a year ago that maybe had ramped up a little more. We're certainly, as we are in a third wave, we shouldn't be letting our guard down. But a year ago, there was a lot more panic and fear and not wanting to return. So is that something that has been consistent that you've seen, or is it something that was a little bit more a year ago and people are learning how to kind of navigate their way through that? Sarah, maybe I'll ask you this one.
Sure. So I've definitely had many more discussions with employees, certainly, who are expressing a fear of returning to work. That's not really a common conversation that I was having pre-COVID, but it certainly was a conversation that I was having a lot of, particularly in the first lockdown and when everything was so new and there was information but not enough and everyone wasn't really sure what was going on. So I'm still having some of those conversations. I find at first it was just sort of a general fear of returning to work, and do I have to go, and what if I get sick, and concerns about whether or not their employers were doing enough in terms of providing safety and PPE. Now what I'm finding is when I'm having those conversations, it's a little bit more specific in that employees are typically have either an underlying health issue themselves or a family member that has an underlying health issue. So the concern is more that for them specifically, there's a potential for a greater risk of transmission and a greater negative outcome from that. So I am still having those conversations, but yeah, it's more sort of, it's less the generalized like panic fear and more because there is I don't want to say that there wasn't a basis or a rationale for it in the beginning, because of course everyone was scared, but there's a more tangible connection to a pre-existing illness for themselves or a family member.
Right. We only have a few minutes left, and we have been focusing over the entire episode about employers as a business show, as somebody who works in a chamber of commerce. But equally as important, and especially something that you see at your firm, is employees who are dealing and trying to navigate their way through the legal responsibilities of either their existing employer or maybe a past employer. That's also services that you provide, Kyle, and you offer to people who are trying to figure out whether they've been wronged, for lack of a better term?
Absolutely, it is, and it's it's something that a lot of individuals ask that question, whether it's during their employment or after the employment's actually come to an end. So it is something the individuals as a result of COVID-19, but even of course before then, people were having to be terminated from their employment for a number of different reasons, whether it's financial or restructuring or performance issues or whatever the case may be. And it is a question that we get asked, I'd say, on a daily basis, as to whether or not I was wrongfully terminated, or, can this change to my contract or my working conditions? Are they permitted to do this? I'm being provided with a new contract middle of my employment. Do I have to sign this? Am I legally required to? Those questions come up quite a bit. And I wouldn't say necessarily that any of them have been heightened as of recent events with the pandemic. I'd say that they've been staying pretty consistent. But yes, those are questions that we receive all the time. And those are things, in my opinion, that individuals should always make sure they seek answers to before they move forward. It's sometimes something that an employee, no matter how many years they've been working in their career, whether with one or multiple employers over the years, there'll be new things that come up that they may not know what they're doing if they sign a document, or if something has been changed on them at the workplace, whether or not they have to just go along with it. So absolutely, it's things that those questions employees should always step forward, speak to an employment lawyer, and get an answer to them before they move forward. It's always advisable to do that, in my opinion.
Right. Nice little segue into my last question to you, Sarah, and that's, I talked about the blog on your website being a valuable resource, but the information on your website is also a great way to people, for employers and employees, to kind of start the process. There is consultations. People can reach out to any of your colleagues, correct?
Yes, that is correct. We do have a lot of information online, and thank you for looking at that and finding it valuable, because we do spend time to put it together, and that's our objective. That part of what we do is educate, and we do that through the website. But yes, we are certainly available for consultations. They can reach out to one of the lawyers directly, or they can just call the firm or send an email to our contact us email address, and then the support staff will reach out to one of the lawyers and schedule a consultation.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I appreciate both of you being a part of the conversation, but also giving us a lot of information to work with when it comes to the legalities surrounding businesses and employers and employees. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having us.
And thank you to everybody at home who has been watching this show. We appreciate you watching. For more information about Mind Your Business, you can head to the Rogers TV website. That is where you will find information about the show. You can also head to the Rogers TV YouTube channel. All of our previous shows, 41 in total, are up on the website, on the YouTube channel, so you are able to access information from those previous shows. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Mind Your Business.